Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Now, historic films made in the spring of 1948 and just released show Noetic preparing for heavily guarded and still largely secret tests of new atomic weapons. The test's purpose is to measure atomic effects on thousands of different materials, 30,000 tons of them, not, as at Bikini, to prove military effectiveness.
San Francisco police say that 9 persons have been arrested in a narcotics raid on the headquarters of the Grateful Dead, a widely popular singing group. 2 members of the group, Rod McKernan and Robert Weir, and their business manager, Danny Rifkin, have been booked on suspicion of possessing narcotics.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
We got a roll program. Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Well, strange lights are causing a viral buzz on YouTube. Could we have caught extraterrestrial activity on a recent newscast? Brandon Arroyo investigates.
As the newscast ended, the controversy began back on September 26th. What is that light shining in the back of the dark night sky?
With coverage reaching all the way back to 1948, for over 70 years, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Now, Fate Magazine Radio is carrying on that tradition of setting the standard in paranormal talk radio as we report and discuss some of the most mysterious and perplexing phenomena imaginable in this strange world of ours. Now, here is your host of Fate Magazine Radio, Kat Hobson.
Good evening. Welcome to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. I am so pleased that you are here. I was going to be interviewing Damien Nott, and he has had some health issues, so if you would please keep him in your thoughts. And he is hopefully doing well, and we are going to be rescheduling him when he's able. But we got a neat treat. He sent in someone else, and I'm very lucky because this gentleman is also a great Australian paranormal researcher. He is someone who has been involved with several books. He is also someone who will up and travel the world to follow up on reports of all types of phenomena. He's helped produce a few books on Australian big cats, and currently he's working on an interesting, I know it will be because I love these lights, documentary on the Min lights. And Mike Williams, thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to be speaking with you tonight.
If you can understand my accent.
I had Scottish Paranormal on with me a couple of weeks ago. I've gotcha.
Okay, fair enough.
Not a problem. So, I am concerned for Damien. I hope that he is going to be well. But I appreciate your willingness to step into the fray, as it were. And that's a special plug for Shannon LeGros, who I care very much. So, what on earth? Because you cover paranormal things, but you also cover big cats. Your interests are so varied, and now you're doing a documentary on strange lights. So, can you tell our listeners something about how you got involved in this and what the Min lights are?
Sure. Okay. Well, how I got involved in all of this was when I was a small child, and I went into my mother's spare room, and she had a pile of books, and I thought, with a false memory, that they were all these really interesting books on ghosts and things. But when I went back years later, it was like 2 books on yoga and a book on transcendental meditation. That's got me started. Mm-hmm. About 31 years ago, I started traveling and looking for the phenomena rather than reading about it as I had as a kid. And I thought it'd be better to actually immerse yourself in things and go into the environment, be it a haunted building or a farm where the guy's seeing lights, or a place where people are seeing cats, or a place where people are seeing tigers. To me, immersing myself in the subject matter was much more interesting than just reading about it. That's how the adventure began.
Well, that is interesting, because yoga is considered metaphysical. And then if you go into the transcendental meditation, which leads you further into metaphysical activity, I think that's neat that was your initial draw. And I think that you're fearless to be going into the wild. But go ahead. I interrupted you.
Oh, no, that's all right. What was interesting was I thought my mother's collection was so amazing because it took me on this path that, I had decent jobs in the blue-collar industry a lot of the time. I would leave those, but when I've gone back to look at the collection, there was nothing in it. And I'm going, this set me on this road of madness. And it is a sort of madness anyway. So I was really disappointed. But, yeah. So you asked me about the lights. Well, predominantly I'm interested in the Min lights, which are just the local term for earth light phenomenon, if you want to call it. You guys have all sorts of variety of them as well. Most localities do. So I'm interested in the lights per se more so than UFOs from outer space and that sort of folkloric connotation, because to me, if it's just a light plasma-like thing, it has no ET connotation most of the time. And to explain that, I'll sort of go back into a contextual thing. Please. If a ball of light the size of a basketball is seen in a haunted building, then a ghost hunter will go, it's a ghost. Now, if you get the same ball and move it across the landscape of a farm within 15, 20 meters of the ground, Farmer Brown will go, there's a Min light. Now, if you get that same ball of light and raise it up in the air, UFO hunters will go, there's a UFO, possibly inferring that it's ET. But my problem is there's always context. So I like to strip things down to completely the raw essentials. Most of the reports in Australia and around the world of things in the sky are not structured objects. They're plasma-like things. So I've gone into areas in the Northern Territory and Queensland and South Australia looking for these things, and most of the time I haven't found them, or I've found what I thought they were and have actually made a complete clown of myself by making a mistake where it wasn't. I can go into that later if you like. I'm not quite sure whether experts using rabbit ears around the term ever talk about all the blunders and mistakes. I've never heard anyone actually brag about the mistakes they've made, but I've made some completely amazing mistakes over the years.
Well, it's a gift. It really is, because to be able to do that and to be able to own up to it, laugh at yourself, acknowledge that, I just can't believe I got that so wrong. That's a gift.
I'll expand on that one. because what I did was I was in South Australia. I'd actually hitched across the Nullarbor Plain with all my camera gear and infrared film. I was taken to this location at the back, looking across the desert, and the locals who lived there saying, we were looking at these lights, and they were going, that's not the road. And the lights looked really odd. What it turned out to be was, well, what happened was I've hitchhiked back across the Nullarbor Plain to Adelaide, caught a plane back, told friends of mine that had contacts in the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. They've funded us to go back there again by car to interview people about Minion lights, which we thought we'd never get any witnesses. In the end, we did get a lot of witnesses. But what happened was when we set up our gear and started watching these lights with other people with different atmospheric conditions, within about 20 minutes, I realised I've led my friends back to watch truck lights on the main road. So at that base, I was competing with cockroaches and ants to get further under the ground in absolute abject humiliation. But because of that complete and utter blunder, we were funded by the Australian government to go interview people, which we did a story, it's a show called To Catch a Flying Star, which is an oral history of the Minion light phenomenon and UFOs, which was one of the first things the Australian government's ever done due to my ineptitude at looking at truck lights. Well,
Apparently they felt that they needed to indulge that.
Well, they did. But what was interesting about that got us some really profound interviews with not someone as clown-like as myself claiming stuff, but it was like there was a really famous case called the Knowles case down in Australia years ago. Mm-hmm. South Australian family encountered the lights. Well, we were in the exact area. We spoke to hunters who had seen phenomena on some of the properties. Now, some of the properties, one of them on the border of Western Australia, was 1 million acres. And this guy was a rabbit shooter. Now, when I say he's had sightings of things, it's a matter of the times. He'd probably spend like 8 years there. So it's 8 years times 352 days times 10 hours at night. So out of that gigantic number, he'd had maybe 15 interactions with light phenomena, predominantly big balls of light or squares of weird lights moving across the landscape. So if you went to that place with that sort of sighting record, you're not going to be counting on seeing much at all. And I did get to see a very interesting form of light refraction called Fata Morgana, which is instead of having a layer of hot air like a mirage, this is a layer of cold air which refracts light and can do weird things. So one day I'm on a road, I saw a red square, a cherry red square, which I chased with my camera filming it. And as I got closer and closer, well, I thought I was getting closer. What happened was that red square ended up merging into a truck headlight. So it was, I don't know how it went from white round to red square, but that was just an example of a refraction effect. The main argument used against Min lights is, it's quite valid to a degree, is over long distances, especially in flat country where you get very cold at night. Cold air will make distant objects look at different locations and look strange, and I get that, but the problem is if you get down to the nitty-gritty, that's like anything. It's the noise and the phenomena. So a lady called Maureen Korzika wrote a book called The Midman Lights, and she deals with the different distances, and probably about 60%, 70% of the witnesses in her book are talking about close to medium. We're talking between 2 meters and 50 meters, which rules out completely Fata Morgana light refraction. But what the skeptics do is the skeptics play games with logic and science. And they ignore the close to medium distance reports and go straight for the long distance reports, which are valid for only the long distance, and then pretend by deception that explains the close reports. Now, I've gone on TV and I look like the whack job being interviewed because the lady's going, come on now, this gentleman, Keith Pettigrew, he's got a physics degree, he's explained it, and I'm trying to say no, a mirage can't appear within a meter of a person or go round people in a circle or go through the back window, through the cabin, and then go through the front window. and the TV presenters going, "Oh, come on, Mike, come on." And I'm like, I'm not the one being batty suggesting mirages can do things that they can't. But she sort of turned it on its head because he was a scientist suggesting something semi-plausible, and I was arguing, well, he's a scientist, but it's implausible what he's suggesting.
Well, true. And I think people who deal with the anomalous find themselves in that position often when it comes time to share their experiences, whether it is with a television reporter or a producer of some type, whatever is going on, because it does seem batty, and because you have degrees behind your name does not mean that you're not batty. It just means that you're well educated, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and I don't mind. But the difference is I'm not labeling it, because a lot of people I've been attacked over the years and they go, "You claim it's outer space, it's alien." I go, "No, I make no claims of what these things are." So by removing that first off, straight off the bat, it stops people going, "Well, you claim," because I talk to people all the time. They go, "They're aliens." I go, "Yeah, okay, they're aliens." Then they'll go, "They're ghosts." I go, "Okay, they're ghosts." Then they go, "They're evil demonic spirits." And I go, "Okay, I don't care about any of that. I'm just interested in the phenomena itself without putting any labels on it." It also makes me a smaller target, because as soon as I label it, people will go, "Well, can you prove it?" We tried to get the skeptics in Australia have a challenge, much like the US skeptics have challenges, where if you could prove the existence of something outside the known parameters of science, there was a $100,000 prize. But the problem was, it was in the words. They play games with words.
Yes.
To prove it was unknown, from my perspective, it means it must be unknown to modern science. So I suggested to them, if they send out some scientists with Damien at least 10 times over the space of, say, a month, they will see things in the sky and close up that are unknown to science. And they said, "No, you can't enter that with an unknown classification." And I'm like, well, I don't understand. And they go, "No, you can't use the word unknown." And I go, okay, I'll play the game. So I labeled the lights, the phenomena, I labeled it ET, because they needed a name for us to even enter the game. And then they said, "Well, no, you can't enter using that terminology because you can't prove it's ET." So
you can't prove it's not.
No, exactly. But the contest was originally about proving something that's unknown, and I can't prove it's unknown, because if it's unknown, it doesn't have a name. It's not. Right. But this is unknown. But they're pretending to try and prove things are unknown, but they have this idiot level of being completely retarded with the words, the games they play. Because from my perspective, most skeptics, I don't know whether the ones in the US are different. The ones over here, they're not interested in science. They're not interested in trained observers, and they're not interested in instrumental results. They're they're basically interested in philosophical discussions of whatever the current paradigm is in science. They're basically slaves to consensus. They know very little about science. They have no interest in science. I consider them just constrained philosophers.
Interesting. Several of the people we have here who I would term professional skeptics are very difficult to converse with, because regardless of what you say, whether you're voicing it as a statement of fact, as an opinion, as just a conversational bent, they come back at you with, "Oh, but you don't know." And I'm like, "Well, you don't either. I mean, you don't know that this is not something that people have experienced this for decades, for centuries in some cases. And you don't know what it is. And you expect me to prove to you what it is. Well, how would you like me to do that? Would you like me to go back and have all this explanation, filled out?" And they just throw their hands up and walk away. Tell me what methodology you want me to use, because you're not going to accept what I have accepted. And, but I do agree that you can't win that because they're not interested in reasoning and listening and learning.
But they're not. See, they claim that the science is worked out by hypothesis, trained observers, and instrumentation. But the trick is, no one ever asks them on camera what instrumental result will you accept, because they'll smirk and sneer and say none. They'll pretend they want that. Yeah, but they don't. You had project identification with Harvey Rutledge. He was an astronomer. He used other physicists with him. Now, they were using instruments in America, recording, viewing, lights in the sky. Now, perfect. But you know about that case, but most ufologists don't, and most skeptics would never touch it with a stick.
I have to interrupt you because we have to go to break, but we will be right back. So, everyone, thank you for being here. We appreciate it, and we will be right back with you.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Several U.S. presidents are on record talking about the UFO mystery.
Yeah, Presidents Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan both had UFO sightings of their own, but the current presidential campaign might be the first in which UFO disclosure has been championed by a major party candidate.
DIA, CIA, it moves around, is operating a program to train psychic spies to spy and use their powers against Russia. John Ronson writes about this in The Men Who Stare at Goats.
The first known sighting of a ghost took place right after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in the late 1860s during the administration of Ulysses Grant.
Project Paperclip, Clinton releases it all in 1998.
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I say, do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial.
It's a place where UFO hunters and scientists gather to examine paranormal activity in the region.
Some of the documents, this is bringing Nazi scientists into the United States to work here. So we fought against the Nazis, and it's not, this again is not a revelation. As early as 1947, 1946, we knew some of this, right?
On the paranormal, will we see U.S. President Barack Obama's foreign policy go intergalactic in a quest for gold stolen by aliens? We'll tell you at least how the White House responded to claims the chief executive has been teleporting to Mars. But let's get to today's Capitol account.
UFOs, hauntings, psychic abilities, conspiracy, ESP, cryptozoology. There are many things that remain unexplained in the inexplicable world around us, and we're talking about them here, looking for answers on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama. The truth is out there.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. And my guest is Mike Williams of Strange Nation. And he is his own researcher as well. He has done all kinds of nifty things. And Mike, I'm sorry that I had to interrupt you because that's really a hot button topic for both of us, relevant to skeptics and challenges and such as that. So,
no worries, Kat. I sort of segue onto the skeptics occasionally because at one stage, I belonged to the Sydney Skeptics Association. I only joined it because I knew I was going to be interviewed a couple of weeks into the future on a radio station, and I also knew that the Skeptics were going to have one of their spokespeople answering it. So they had the confounding problem where I was introduced as Mike Williams from the Sydney Skeptics Association, arguing with Barry, whatever his name was, from the city, and he went berserk off radio to me. I did it just to
that's
wind
funny.
up. Yeah, because they do some they do some good work in exposing hoaxes, but beyond that, they're out of their depth completely.
Well, I find it interesting that you referred to their lack of understanding of science relevant to some of this. One of the people that I have interacted with is well versed in science, but he's also very much a gotcha guy. And I respect him because he is well versed. He has done the work to be able to understand what he's trying to get a grasp on, or trying to get you to show him, evidence of. But he's not open-minded enough, I think, to be able to put aside something for a couple of minutes to have the conversation without going to the getcha moments.
Yep.
And
so you're basically wasting your time.
Pretty much. So I will talk to him face to face, but I will not talk to him, by message or other stuff, because anything that I put down, I think, would be twisted.
Yep.
And I don't have an interest in being slammed for something that someone else can't understand or won't open their mind to.
Right, but at the same time, I find, sometimes in sort of paranormal or UFO groups, I have people sneering at me, going, "Oh, look, a skeptic." Whilst if I'm in a skeptics group, they're going, "Oh, look, a crazy believer." So I sort of
you can't win.
I sort of slide. No, not really, because my argument's always been, whatever the lights are, I believe you'll never know what they are. So people go, "Well, that's really pessimistic," and I go, "No, I believe the phenomena, in my personal view, is fairly nihilistic. It actually leads nowhere at the very end, because people go, "Well, if we have more data, we'll know what these things are." Mm-hmm. And my argument's the reverse. I go, "No, we can give you a radar setup. We can give you the spectral range of the lights, the distance, the radiation, the speed, the velocity, blah blah. We can give you 1,000 data points on that. Let's pretend for the actual argument, we know it's not a prosaic drone or something, right? Now, just for the argument, we can give you 1,000 data points, but that won't tell you what the thing is. We'll never get closer to the essence of the thing. Now, people can say it's ET, it's whatever it may well be, but you'll never know from collecting the data. So skeptics they think they require. Well, that leads you another way. What we're always trying to do, and I understand that, we're trying to look up or find relationships to certain things. You spoke to me about the Thomas Divide lights. You're interested in trying to find a topological geomagnetic possible link to it. And I get that. That's a logical thing to try and do. I try it too, and I'll also sort of pretend I try it quite often. But the paradox is this. A lot of the phenomena we're both interested in, it's not logical. It's not deductive, it's not reductionistic, and there's no clear causative link. But we're trying to use a mechanistic viewpoint, which is understandable, of what modern science is built on, where we want to cause and effect. We're trying to find something, or correlations, whatever. We get a weak correlation, but at the end of the day is the phenomena we're interested in is not reductionistic, but we'll take the paradigm of a reductionistic mechanistic science and go, we're going to try and explain this, which I think falls apart, because at the end of the day, I don't think you'll find it, especially because whenever I've found a correlation, I go, okay, this location or something, it falls apart. As soon as you think you've got a pattern, the only patterns I know about to a degree is certain spatial areas and certain individuals seem to experience more weird stuff than other areas. And people go, well, wow, that's really profound. Of course, they're being sarcastic. We We can't really move beyond that, and I don't see any way of moving beyond that ever. So people go, once again, they say it's a negative viewpoint. I go, it's not a negative viewpoint. You'll just end up with more lights being filmed by people, and people will be speculating. We'll all die and we'll never know what the subject is. I love it because to me it's really profound. The proximity of the stuff. Well, I'll give you an example. When I was on a farm which has a swamp-like ground, which people go, oh, it's methane, but it's not, and sulfides going, it's nothing like that at all. What was happening was, when I was there, the first night I was there, the people were going, well, look, they're pointing out into the forest at night, and I could see a few, nothing much interesting. And then they said, look, the beehive, it's glowing. And I'm looking, and it's just from the full moon. I'm like, oh God, I'm thinking I'm just wasted my time. And then they're saying to me, there's that light we talk about. And I'm looking, and I can't see what they're talking about. And then I move to my right, and I can see a light the size of a ping pong ball, probably maybe, I don't know, 50, 60 meters away, and it's glowing like it's an artificial source at the base of a tree. And I say to them, what's that? And they're looking at me like I'm mental, going, that's what we're talking about. So what happened is I started to walk towards it, and as I did, it became smaller and smaller till it turned up to the size of a pin. So I couldn't find it. So I walk away, and then it started glowing again as soon as I walked back towards them. So then I've walked towards it with a torch, and as I'm walking towards it, my torch started, and it's a brand new torch, great batteries, it worked, once or twice, but perfectly. The torch started to turn off and on. So now I'm getting...
Interesting.
Well, I'm getting a field effect. And I go, well... So, but this is where it goes quite weird. I behaved really oddly after the interaction, what do you want to call it? Because I've gone close, and now I've seen something I haven't seen before in this location. My torch is reacting really strange, on and off and on, which I've got other field effects too, which I'll go to. So I've come back in, and I've said to them, it's okay, everyone, it's a field effect. We can go inside. What sort of an idiotic statement is that, right? So
definitely interesting.
Well, I've got, is it a Fugui state where I've gone into this weird trance-like state of not really reacting properly? We've gone inside. Now, I've seen something which is quite profound, and we were talking about breeding ducks and other things till about 2 a.m. when I've gone to bed. And the next day I woke up and I'm going, hang on, you saw a weird light, you walked towards it, you announced to everyone it's a field effect, and started talking about duck breeding? That makes no sense. I left the property. Drove away. I was looking around for other things. I've come back 2 days later after I've rugged them, and I said, look, that was really weird. I'd like to go out and see stuff again, or see if it happens. So they go, okay. So what we did was we got some walkie-talkies, and they've got a wall near a canal to stop in case there's water floods. So during the day with walkie-talkies, line of sight to the farmhouse, the walkie-talkies work perfectly. Sorry. On the other side of the canal wall, in daylight, the walkie-talkies work perfectly. That night, I get onto the canal wall, and the walkie-talkies, line of sight now, not even on the other side of the wall, the walkie-talkies are making squelching sounds, they're making screeching sounds. I'm getting really weird EMF effects on the walkie-talkie. When I go back to them, the walkie-talkies didn't work properly till the next day. So, and I never saw anything that night. They claimed they did from their vantage point. So now I'm getting some really strange. I've just never seen it before. The walkie-talkies weren't working. The torch died. So on the third night, I've got a Sony A7S, which is a very good low light camera. But it's like it cost me a lot of money. I'm scared that a possible EMF effects off whatever these things are going to affect the camera. And anyway, if I did film it and showed it to you, you will see a white light in a black background, and you'll go, wow, Mike, that doesn't mean anything. That's my problem, as you're more than aware, that sort of subjects. Yes. So I've gone into this foresty, swampy area with gumboots on, and I've got about 200 meters from the house, and I'm standing there, and a ball of light the size of a basketball, probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 feet away, turns on. The light was beautiful, pure, like white light. And I stopped dead and I'm going, what? Yeah, well, I was stunned. Never seen anything like this before. So I watch it, and it stays on for 2 seconds, off for 2 seconds, on for 2 seconds, and I'm just looking at it, and you got to be joking. Then, about 10 feet behind it, another one turned on. So when the foreground one was on, the other one was off. I looked at that for about 4 or 5 minutes. Now, I've often bragged, nothing's going to scare me. I was scared to move forward and didn't go forward. I didn't get an overwhelming feeling. You know, people go, oh, I got a feeling to go. I didn't get that. I was just uncomfortable seeing something I've looked for so long, so close. And I also got the distinct impression, whatever it was, there was a level of sentience there. It knew I was there 100%. So I chickened out and I walked back with my galoshes back to the farm, and I never saw anything like that again. So then what happened was I've brought a whole load of people back a year later. I've told them some of the stuff I'd seen. They're really wound up. I had a neurologist interested in the paranormal. I had a geologist to try and look at the background things. I had a parapsychologist with me. I had all sorts of people there. All the best plans fell apart. First off, on this particular farm, I hadn't ruled out the possibility of contamination. So we worked out later on there was a road in the distance that lights could move from right to left and left to right, which never matched anything I had seen all the farmers. That was the one contamination point. Everyone stayed there. No one saw a thing. I go back there another year later with another friend of mine, told him, you're not going to see anything more than light because whatever the phenomenon is, it's fairly rare. We walk outside and it's on. We're looking at like little fairy lights up in the trees turning on and off, just blinking. There was a weird red flashing light going really quickly in the forest. We hop in the car and I'm gonna solve the puzzle this time. We get down the back there. There's nothing in the background. We stand on a ridge and look back at the farm, and now there's a gigantic orange blob glow thing to the right of the farm. We go flying back to the farmhouse trying to solve the mystery. Look out again, there are these little sparkly lights all over the place. It was truly amazing. But if you filmed them, even on the best camera, people would go, that doesn't prove anything. That's the problem.
Truth. You speak truth. But out of curiosity, you said that there was a highway there. Was there...
there was a main road in the distance going sort of north-south. That wasn't contaminating the place. There was a road going from the right to left that if you saw cars, you'd see a white light moving right to left or the brake light going left to right. But so I'm an idiot for never trying to rule that out. But at no stage when I was on the farm did I ever see anything move from right to left or left to right parallel to the ground. It was always up at tree level or these big bright. That's what. So I felt like a complete goose, not actually checking that, because when we did even more checking, we found that because the farmers had told us about a continuous flashing red light, so we got a GPS and worked out that the continuous flashing red light, which I was uncomfortable with because I'd never seen any paranormal subject always start at a set time. I've never seen that. I don't know of that, right? When we marked the actual flashing light, it was a navigation beacon on a lake, and then used the GPS device to go back to the house. We knew 100% that they were looking at the beacon. So the problem was, as you would have more than likely encountered, if someone's reporting, if some people are exposed to unusual phenomena, quite often they'll report stuff that's prosaic and mix that they'll put that in the mix of the weird stuff. So now they'll contaminate, because they're seeing weird stuff so often, they have a greater predilection to call stuff that's potentially not weird. So what happened was, when we tried to explain that to them carefully, the wife got slightly aggressive with me, because it's turned on, and I'm explaining to her, this is what we've measured to we had what it looked like was, it was actually higher at a higher point than it looked like. So it was a perfect line of sight. So I'm explaining to her only one aspect of it. and she's getting slightly aggressive with me because it's a flashing light. And she's going, it's moving. How do you explain that, smart ass? And I'm going, no, it's not moving.
It's
because you have no frame.
Yes.
Well, and I understand why. It's because you've got no frame of reference. It's pitch black nothing and a blob of light. She's going, it's moving. And it does look like it's moving because you've got nothing to, there's nothing to actually match in the blur. So your eyeballs are having slight movements. Yeah. So it got very, very uncomfortable, and I had to stop. And then later on, talking to her about it, she didn't acknowledge it in the slightest. Just wouldn't acknowledge it. Okay, no worries. And I'm not going to get into an argument with people that have taken me into their house. They've fed me. They've allowed me to stay upstairs. This is the problem too with a lot of things when you're investigating a case. You're immersed in people's lives.
Indeed.
So it's not a matter. I'm not a scientist. I don't pretend to be. I did a couple of units of anthropology. I consider myself more like a verbose folklorist. So I go in there and I say, I'm not a scientist. I go in there, I end up sharing meals and drinks with them, and they're telling me stuff, and that to me is really interesting. But the trouble is sometimes there are other dynamics within a family where the husband's seeing stuff, but the wife's not. So the wife's super aggressive. Or reverse, or the son's seeing stuff, but the parents aren't, so they're slightly aggressive to a guy that they don't know with the weird haircuts on the property. So sometimes the dynamics can throw you off, and it's worse still when sometimes the people appear to have some sort of a mental illness that can change things pretty quickly too, or they're doing something you didn't know that they were doing initially, or they're just misreporting stuff. I've travelled to some locations where the video they sent me is really interesting, but when I get there, I realise that what they're saying, where they're seeing it, it's not quite right. So that ended up with us. He was telling me about a thing called morph jets, where he was saying the phenomena that he was witnessing with his wife would turn from a ball of light into a plane. There's some sort of cover. I went, okay, fair enough, right? So what we're doing, we're standing in the dark. This is in northern Queensland, and we're looking down south, which I knew was a plane route, and you can see a ball of light in the distance. Well, that's what it looks like. It's a plane. Yes. Yeah, well, it's right to the plane. So, but as the light's getting closer, it's now got the navigation lights on it, and he goes, it just morphed. And I go, well, what do you mean? He's going, well, now it's looking like a plane. And I'm going, but it is a plane. And they're looking at me like I'm mental, going, no, it's changed from a white light ball
oh my goodness,
to a plane as a cover. And I'm going, but if we move the observers 200 k's south of where we are, and they're watching the same thing, what is it going from ball of light to, oh, quick, there's people, plane, then to ball. And so they're looking at me like I was mental. That actually went really ugly. That went really badly, that one. They turned out to be, I believe they were making methamphetamine, so that went pear-shaped.
Ah, well, everybody needs a hobby, but we need to take a break. So we will be right back. Y'all stay with us, and we'll be right back with Mike Williams.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio. I am so glad you're here. I'm enjoying my guest, Mike Williams, who is from Australia. He's a paranormal researcher, and we're talking about the men, I call them men lights. And here they would be spook lights. So, you know, I was actually, I shared with you through our messaging before the show about my experiences with those here. Have you had people say that they have been approached by them? Like, usually from what I've seen, they tend to stay like on the other side of a divide, a mountain divide. But I have had one that moved toward me and was had moved quickly to where it was close to me on my side. Does that happen there? Are people approached by these lights that they're seeing?
Yes, they do, because that's the most profound experiences. The closest I've ever come to the subject matter is when I was with Damien in a location north of Taree. He's bent down looking at something in his bag, and I didn't know him that well. So, you don't know whether the people are delusional or whatever. Now, 10 seconds before that, before what's about to happen, I'm about to tell you, he's gone, look, a disc. And he came straight over the top of the head, and I didn't see it. And I went, oh, no, I think this guy might be a little bit delusional. And then he's bending over, playing something with his bag, and I'm on his right-hand side. And I watched a light, like a fluorescent tube, that sort of length and shape. I watched it appear over his left shoulder and just melt into the ground, I don't know, 2 foot from me and about 3 inches from him, straight into the ground next to his foot. So that's the closest I've seen it. So he jumped up in the air, and I was like, what the hell? That whole evening we had, he's filming. I'll tell you what's really odd too with this one. That was the closest I've ever seen the lights approach. He's had closer things than that. But at one stage, we were watching things up in the sky. There'd be a plane, and then a tube-like thing had come over the top. I wrecked his audio because my brain started to shut down, because I'm saying it's a plane, and then I would start to swear and go, it's got no portholes, wings, tail, or lights. It was just on dusk. And what was even weirder, I've got the Sony A7S. I can see these things with my eyeball perfectly. I can't find them in the camera on a tripod. I cannot find them. I go to his camera. He can see the same thing I'm seeing. He's got them on his video camera. He's filming them. But for the life of me, I could never find them on my camera that evening while I was watching these things go over the top. Plane, then it'll be a tube. Then it'll be a plane, then it'll be a tube. He had the camera running when we were just mucking around talking or whatever, and on playback, he's got these things appearing in the sky like squiggly eels or something. They just appear in points of the sky and then squiggle off like a life form. We had a passive infrared hunter's game trail camera working about 50 meters behind us that works off changes in heat in a localized area. It's not changing movement. And on playback of that camera, something was so close to the camera that you couldn't make out anything. It was just this blur, and something moved in front of the trail camera for 20 minutes, just backwards and forwards. But probably just a couple of... Yeah, it's just... But that was one of the most surreal nights of my life when you add up everything we saw. as you're more than aware, most times you go out looking, you never find anything. And talking to people like Damien, to me, is the gold, because he's not a sky watcher per se. He's not going out looking most of the time. He just gets these weird feelings and goes out. And from that, he's accumulated the largest database of films and stills and whatever you like to call it that I've ever seen or know about in the world. So people accuse him of making that claim. He doesn't. I do, because I don't know anyone living that's ever recorded so much paranormal phenomena up close, in your face, at different distances, often with other people with him, and sometimes with the media with him as well. I don't know anyone. And so to me,
that's astounding.
Yeah, I know, but it's what's even more astounding and really sad. I've spent 9 years trying to find scientists of any persuasion to come out and work with him, and failed for 9 years.
What is their reason for not joining in?
Not
you would think
interested.
they would be batty to go do that.
No, have zero interest. The closest I ever got was a neurobiologist who came with me to the original farm. I told him, this is what's happening. Can you measure his brainwaves? Because he's getting PK effects. I've seen things around him. He's just weird stuff, as weird as hell. And he said, this is amazing. If only he lived in Victoria, I could get the helmets on him. He could examine his brainwaves. So I've gone, mate, we'll put him on a bus for the next week. And as soon as I said that, he said, oh, no, I found I'm not allowed to use that in my gear now. And that's the closest I've ever got. So people go, well, why doesn't science back this up? You try and get a scientist to do this, and especially since the phenomena around him, it doesn't turn on as soon as you get there. It's random. So to me, I would love a real documentary crew to have actually worked with him, but to do that, you have to stay with him for 2 weeks. You can't just flow in, which is what they do. They'll fly in, they'll chat to camera, they'll expect to see something. Most of the time they won't. He'll give them vast amounts of his data, and they'll fly out. To me, that's not really interesting. You have to spend time with him, unfortunately or fortunately, and then your brain will fry, because when it's on, you've got light bulbs popping, you've got cameras doing weird. I've sat with him. We're driving up to a location where a film crew is doing a shoot. We're at the bottom of the hill where we've seen some weird as hell stuff when I told you about before with the trail camera. Mm-hmm. We're at the bottom of the hill. Damien's camera's fully charged. Now, he has problems with battery charges, which is a renowned haunting.
Yeah.
Yep, okay. At the bottom of the hill, he's charged his camera, and I watched him charge it. We start. Halfway up the hill, he goes, look. And I looked. I should have filmed it. He's got half a charge in the battery. We get to the top of the hill, battery's flat. Oh, and you got to be kidding. I've got video of him. He's got a mobile phone, and he's showing the camera to camera. The mobile phone, you know, when you're charging a phone, the charge goes up or down like a little thing. The charges the phone's charging, but he's showing you all angles of the telephone. It's not connected to anything. It's only when he's holding it. And I said to him one day, is it actually charging? And he goes, no. He goes, it'll go flat as normal. He said, when I'm holding it, it looks like it's charging. One time I had an old tri-field meter. It measures localized changes in EMF fields, or however you want to set it. And I'm showing Damien how it works. I set it up and had it for a magnetic field, EMF field combination. So I said, look, you set it up, you let it go quiet, you get your hand and you move it backwards and forwards, and as it breaks the localized lines, the tri-field meter makes a whirring sound. So I show him and it works. So I put it in front of him and I go, have a go. He moves his hand backwards and forwards around the tri-field meter. The tri-field meter could not see him breaking the Earth's magnetic field. It had no effect.
Gosh. Interesting.
It's interesting to me and you, but it's not interesting to anyone with a scientific bent. That's what's really sad.
They're the ones that should be more interested.
Of course. But you'd have to hire someone with a physics degree with the fair amount of equipment, and you'd have to pay him for a month to be staying with Damien or near Damien for a month. Now, you can talk about, you've got the Robert Bigelow doing all his skinwalker research, right? And all that sort of stuff. And people can say, oh, they've got an amazing amount of data put away in a box. Well, unless you pull it out of the box, I don't believe you, right?
Yes,
So
you have to share
my problem
that.
was this. Exactly. So it's like you saying to me, well, Mike, I've got an amazing amount of data. And I go, can you share it? And you go, I don't have to, Mike. It's my stuff. I paid for it. And I go, okay, fair enough. Well, to me, I put Bigelow's stuff in the same category. Unless you can back it up, I don't believe rumours that you've got amazing amounts of work. So Bigelow, from my knowledge, has produced one blurry video and I think a couple of stills out of all the skinwalker rants for all those years. Yet Damien, with a budget of nothing and a couple of years of doing all this work, has produced 10,000 times as much as a man with an unlimited budget. I'm like, well, how does that make any sense?
Well, I don't know, but I've actually tried to interview Mr. Bigelow and have not been successful in that endeavor. Still working on it.
It'd be interesting to have his take on the phenomena, but the problem is it's all this rumours and swirls and, counterclaims.
I'm with you. It needs to be brought out. It needs to be shared.
I've got a funny feeling, I've got a gut feeling that he's probably got very little anyway in the result. They'll have more data points because I think MUFON gave them access to all their records, right? Or gave him the records or whatever weird thing they have. But the trouble is, if you try and concentrate on witness reports, you'll get lost in the noise. You'll go mad. It'll be like a man saw a light over in the sky, and then a man saw a light. After 10,000, 2 people saw a light. You just go mad because all you'll end up with is a map with pins on it. And putting more pins on a map doesn't get you any closer to what the phenomenon is. You just go mad with more pins on the map.
Well, that's the same thing if you go through any of the reporting databases, because there's just simply not there's not enough information. This person saw this at this time, and this one was a tube, this one was a rectangular. The ones that I am interested in are the squares, because those are being reported left and right now. And you don't really pay, unless you follow those databases, you don't know that. But I have had 3 friends, all of them scientific minded and trained, 2 military trained, who are encountering these squares, and they're cubes. I mean, they're dimensional. They're not just, out there. But one of them had their personnel disappear like they had gone through a portal. And as they're panicking because their personnel just disappeared, then they're back and the cube is gone. So that's just that blew my mind. That really blew my mind, because that is not far from where I am, and something that it's a group that I would be out with. So I thought, this is interesting. Why was I not there?
Well,
so
perhaps it was good that you weren't there.
Or maybe not. Maybe that was a chance to interact with something that would have been the experience of a lifetime. So,
or not the experience you would actually want.
Well, no, but I mean, but those people were none the worse for wear.
Yep.
So I did want to tell you that we only have a minute left in your hour, and the chat room.
I can see the clock.
Yes. We have got the chat room is wishing Damien well and a speedy recovery.
That's great.
So we are concerned for him. I hope everything is going well for his treatment. And I know he's got to be a little, concerned. Things are not what they once were when it comes to...
No, I know. We both believe he might have certain medical complaints from proximity exposure to the lights themselves.
That is not an impossibility.
No, because some of the things he's had with medical, and I've seen, and some of the equipment meltdowns I've seen, it implies he's close to energy sources that we know very little about.
Yes, and that's something else that will just blow your mind. I mean, it really will. It's very frightening when you consider some of the possibilities, because there is microwave, and there is also other types of energy around those, but I do know that there is microwave. So we are going to go to our break. So, news break. Great time to do cartwheels, catch up on your day. I know that, I don't know if it will have made this broadcast yet, but I do know that they have started the door-to-door inoculations. So we can just ponder on that for a minute, and we'll be back with Frank Lee. Y'all hang with me. Mike, thank you so much. I have enjoyed
No worries, Kat.
This has been the fastest hour. It's just been way too fast. But thank you. I told you we were going to do this again.
Sure, sometime.
Okay. We'll be right back, y'all.
Live from NPR News, I'm Janine Herbst. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention can require cruise companies to follow COVID-19 rules for now. Veronica Zaragovia of member station WLRN reports a panel of federal judges has put on hold a lower court judge's decision blocking the requirements.
On June 18th, a federal judge based in Tampa sided with Florida in its lawsuit against the CDC's sailing order or conditions that cruise companies must meet to restart commercial trips. For instance, cruise companies could require nearly all staff and passengers to be vaccinated against COVID-19. But after July 18th, these rules would become non-binding. Now, a panel at the U.S. Court for the 11th Circuit has sided with the CDC. On Sunday, political reporter Josh Gerstein tweeted out the 11th Circuit Court panel's vote to put a hold on blocking the CDC from enforcing its COVID-19 rules. For NPR News, I'm Veronica Zaragovia in Miami.
Dry heat, gusty winds, and lightning are forecast through tomorrow in parts of Oregon and California. NPR's Amy Held reports the conditions could spark more wildfires in addition to the dozens already burning.
Oregon's bootleg fire grows a few miles each day amid what's called an exceptional drought. Meteorologist Derek Williams.
That drought has translated into extreme fire behavior.
Loggers are taking down scorched trees in an effort to protect firefighters. Another fire sparked by lightning on the 4th of July south of Lake Tahoe has exploded in size, forcing evacuations and the cancellation of a bicycle race in the Sierra Nevada. Paul Burgess was planning to ride before he saw the plumes of smoke.
A fire that's growing at that rate of speed, to me, it seems like it's a good idea and also common sense to just get out of the area.
Climate change is increasing the likelihood that wildfires will be bigger, more intense, and destructive. Amy Held, NPR News.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel says there are no words for the devastation that historic floods have brought on the western regions of her country. As NPR's Rob Schmitz reports from the flooded region, Merkel paid a visit to the worst-hit areas as crews continue to search for bodies.
After taking a tour of the region, Merkel called the devastation frightening, but said she was reassured by how people in the region are sticking together to clean up their hometowns. Nearly 200 people have died from flooding in Germany and Belgium, with more than 670 injuries. Many people are still unaccounted for, and crews continue to search for bodies.
NPR's Rob Schmitz reporting. American Colin Morikawa won the British Open and became the first player to capture two different majors on the first attempt at each. The 24-year-old is the first player since Bobby Jones in 1926 to win two majors in 8 or fewer starts. He closed with a bogey-free 4 under 66 today. This is NPR News. Hundreds of flights have been canceled at airports across Portugal today as the effects of 2-day strikes by ground handling staff snowballed. As Allison Roberts reports, Lisbon's airport has been hit the worst, with thousands of travelers affected.
The strike by ground handling workers has led to cancellations at all of Portugal's airports, but Lisbon's operations have been devastated. Even more flights were cancelled on Sunday compared to Saturday. Of around 500 flights scheduled, at least 320 won't take off, according to officials. The airport in Portugal's second largest city, Porto, was also worse affected Sunday. The strike ends at midnight, but another is planned for the end of the month if no deal on bonuses and other issues is reached. Employees are also refusing to work overtime, meaning further disruption in an already difficult summer season for airlines and travellers. For NPR News, I'm Alison Roberts in Lisbon.
In California, Los Angeles County residents are once again required to wear masks indoors, regardless of their vaccination status. It's a mandate that health officials hope will reverse the latest spikes in coronavirus cases, hospitalizations, and deaths from COVID-19. That rule went into effect late last night for the nation's largest county, where the rising caseload is led by the highly transmissible Delta variant and unvaccinated people. California has seen a steady rise in cases since the state fully reopened its economy on June 15th and did away with capacity limits and social distancing. I'm Janine Herbst, and you're listening to NPR News.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to the second hour of Fate Magazine Radio. I am so glad that you are here. And if you have not been to fatemag.com lately, you are missing out. We have new editions, we have shirts, we have baseball cards, we have archives, and I'm going to tell you something. Phyllis can find what you are looking for. I don't know how she does it, but she is just brilliant at being able to pull anything, and they are uncirculated, perfect condition. Just go ahead and fill out your collection because I know a lot of you have them. They're great. That's fatemag.com. And also you can find the listing point there for the show. So, Fate Mag Radio. We will be discussing that later. But first, I want to introduce you to my friend, my research partner, somebody who makes sure that all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and I have not done anything that's really going to flip anybody out much. But don't let him fool you. He has staged a house. So, without further ado, hey Frankly, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Kat, and I appreciate you having me on. Been a long time.
It has been so long because you are such a serious, dedicated honor student who is volunteering in all these honor societies that people keep putting you into. And you've taken the time out of all that to get engaged to what appears to be just the most wonderful woman for you. And you are just living large, man.
Well, you know, these honor societies, you know, they say I'm smart. I think I've.
They didn't ask me.
Right. Well, you know, I try to not let them talk to anybody that actually knows me. But you know,
I would have told them you weren't smart. You're brilliant. So there.
Well, you know, and I'll give you that $20 after we get off the air. Just remind me for saying that. But yeah, doing that. Had a lot going on. Yeah, I had a lot going on since last time I was on. Yeah, got engaged. You know, found you know, just wonderful woman who, you know, tolerates me and, you know, hasn't put me out yet. No, she's really great. And so, which, you know, she's actually interested in a lot of this crazy stuff that I'm into as well. And, you know, and that's not something that I've found very often. You know, a lot of times, you know, you start talking about paranormal stuff and all that, they kind of look at you like you're crazy, and, you know, and so, you know, but the one thing I can always say is if she ever calls me crazy, all I can, all I got to do is say, well, hey, you're the one that's with me, so.
You said yes.
Right.
By the way, great job on the ring too. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you. But yeah, I had that going on. That, and I just realized since last time I was on the show, I'm also a grandpa now, times two.
Are. Isn't that just so wild?
Yeah, I've aged like 20 years since last time, so.
Well, it's only been a year since we talked, so,
Right.
It just feels like 20.
I'm telling you, but it been a lot going on. But yeah, still doing school, still, working on getting my edumocation so I can be smart. Trying to put the credentials behind some of the work because, so some of the things that we have in mind and some of the types of research, it's hard to, it's really hard to be noticed and hard to have much of a voice if you don't have certain credentials behind your name.
Absolutely.
And, and it does, you do have to put in a certain amount of time, reading, studying. While experiments and field work is always great, you do have to fix through the books. And, something that I think a lot of people fail to understand is before we can understand anything that is paranormal or supernatural, we first have to have a vast understanding of what is normal and what is natural.
This is true.
So,
because you can't automatically jump to everything isn't if you don't know what is.
Absolutely. We can't, if we aren't familiar with everything that can occur naturally or normally, then we can't reasonably distinguish between what could possibly be supernaturally or paranormally occurring. So, and that's something that we see very often in the paranormal field, are things that are easily naturally explained, but people just aren't familiar with certain elements of physical science or biology or just different things. And, understanding just those simple little concepts makes such a difference. It really elevates one's research, and it's so important. But, I've just got to say that, after hearing Mike Williams, that his approach that he was talking about, well, first and foremost, if I ever go to Australia, I'm looking him up and, I'll buy the beer, but I'm taking a notebook. Me and him are going to have to sit down and because, I'm going to be taking some notes because I love the way that he goes about things. He made so many good points about context, for one. Like when he was talking about the Min lights, or, how in other parts of the world they might be called spook lights, and how some people might say that they're extraterrestrial. Some people might say they're attributed to ghosts or spirits, or, and we see that so many times in different things. It's, a lot of times when people are looking for something in particular and they have that mindset, they're going to find what they're looking for in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
That predetermination that they have, a ghost hunter, if they go into 2 or 3 buildings, they're probably going to find some type of haunting or, some type of ghostly activity there, because that's what they're looking for. And so something that happens is going to correlate with that. And he made such a good point, and I completely, wholeheartedly agree with him about taking the context out of it and looking at, okay, this is the activity that's happening. I don't know what it is, but this is the phenomena. And I absolutely agree with that approach. And I think me and you have actually had quite a few conversations about that as well.
A few. Late night drives, yes.
That, about how, if you look at it, though, people have been, it's like we've talked about, people have been writing stories of strange phenomena as long as people have been writing. And granted, the phenomena has been, attributed to different beings. It may be the result of a curse or a deity or a demon or a ghost or a monster or whatever. But strange occurrences have been written down as long as people have been writing.
Yes.
Now, what if we that too? And what if we take away the explanation of the activity and just look at the activity itself and see, okay, what could be causing this? And like he was saying, go at it from that level. And I loved the way that he was, talking about the, presenting his findings as unknown, and, they didn't want it to be unknown, so he put a label on it. Well, it can't be that either. That was...
Yes.
I'm surprised that you didn't hear me laughing at that at your house from outside.
I did. It must have been that noise I heard rumbling across. Sounded a lot like thunder, but it had to be you.
That probably was. But, so it's, it's kind of a slippery slope. We have to keep an open mind. And as I've heard you say many times, you have to keep an open mind, but not so open that your brain falls out. That's the best way to put it. And you have to kind of evaluate some of our information. And that's why something I was going to mention to you tonight is putting some of the information that we find when we're looking at things, looking up information, looking at some of these websites, books, whatever we find, videos. Sometimes you have to put it to the test, specifically the crap test.
Indeed. And you're going to have to describe the crap test for our listeners.
Yes, that way, because, you want to know if it's crap or not. So I'm going to break it down, so that you can kind of rule it out. And so
let me stop you before you start breaking down.
Okay.
We're going to do the break ahead of this because I don't want to have to stop. I think that it's too much fun, and I think that this break is too much fun. I'm playing it in honor of you. So, here we go. We'll see you on the flip side.
Warning, the following message does not necessarily reflect the views of WBHM-DB or its hosts, guests, listeners, or of any functioning adult in general. In fact, Frank should probably seek professional help. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi there, Frank Lee here. I thought that I would spend a few moments telling you about the positivity from the network here. The overall message of para-unity and happiness, and how everyone here wants to get along with everyone out there, and how everything is just wonderful. Wait, cat's not looking. Okay, I've got something to really tell you. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what's really going on. Honestly, all that being nice and positive crap was kind of hurting my soul, as dark as it is. So, what's really happening? Well, you see it all the time. Everybody and their brother out there has a paranormal team because they watched a couple of episodes of Ghost Hunters or some crap like that. So they go and they spend half their mortgage payment on tools and things that light up that they don't understand. And then the next logical step after buying matching black t-shirts and posing like 90s rappers for their Facebook page is to, of course, have their own podcast. Well, you know what? You're not going to find that crap here. What we have here at WBHM Digital Broadcasting is the best host, the best guest, bringing you real information. All of the hosts here on this network know their stuff. They are the people who have been out there doing the work, doing actual research. And no, by research, I don't mean binge watching some kind of cheesy TV show on Netflix. I mean reading books. I mean out in the field doing the legwork. And who are they interviewing on their shows? They're bringing you the people they have learned from. They're bringing you the best in the field, covering all kinds of topics from UFOs and aliens to Bigfoot to cryptozoology to ghosts to anything you can think of a bit strange and unexplained. It is here, and you're going to get the best information here. So stay tuned to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Don't go anywhere. Speaking of going somewhere, I've got to go before my mic gets cut. We'll see you there on WBHM-DB.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio, and we are talking with parapsychologist, or working on officially, Frank Lee. We are discussing all things paranormal, and we are now moving on to the crap test. Frank, the floor is yours. Oh, Frank. Did you run and hide?
Let's see.
You can't hide.
Okay, can you hear me now? Oh, okay, good deal. So yeah, there's so much information out there, and so much more misinformation. Just the crap test is kind of something that is used in research to help kind of evaluate your sources and say, is this something that seems reliable? Or is it, as the name would suggest, is this crap? And and it's exactly as you would think, CRAAP. Okay. So in the crap method, the C is for currency. So you're looking for what you're looking for there is, when was this information published, or when was it posted? Has the information been revised or updated? And has any of the links that you find, if it's online, are these links functional? Is the research current for what you're trying to look up, or is it outdated? If I were looking, I probably wouldn't look at a medical journal if it was one that was published in 1924, because there might have been one or two discoveries since then. And the same as even one from 2004 versus today. So you you had to consider that. Currency is so important. I mean, just to kind of, we think of science and how fast things go. We tend to forget, scientific fact. You've heard me mention this in some of my presentations, how science is fluid. It changes. Yes. If somebody thinks that science is absolute fact, they don't understand science at all. 1,000 years ago, in the Western world, the scientific fact was that the Earth was flat. Then 500 years went by, and then suddenly the Earth was round, but it was the center of the universe, and that was a scientific fact. And if you argued with that, just kind of ask Copernicus or Galileo how that worked out for him.
Galileo did not have a happy ending with that
right.
particular topic.
Right. The Inquisition, they didn't take too kindly of that. But people think, well, that's all ancient. But I'm in my 40s, and you consider what I learned when I was in school about molecular structure. What I was taught was the smallest particle that exists inside the atom were the electron, the neutron, and the proton. That's as small as it gets, most minute particle. Well, guess what?
Not so much.
We know that's wrong. I mean, that was, and that's just been, in the 80s and 90s, because, since then, they've discovered the quarks, the Higgs bosons, the string particles. If you look at how much, so think about that. My science textbooks that I had when I was in school are completely wrong. So
gives one pause, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. So if you consider that, that's how fast science can turn on a dime, and information can go from one day being correct to being absolutely wrong. That's why currency is so important, and that's just one example. I mean, there are plenty more. You also had to look at reliability, and also relevance. But so that's where your R is going to come in, and what kind of information is this? Is it based on facts and statistics, or is it padded? And we see this so much, especially some of these websites that kind of go to the pseudoscience.
Yes.
Where we've all seen them. Well, Newton's third law of thermodynamics, that says that matter cannot be destroyed; it can only be converted. Therefore, a spirit cannot be cannot disappear. Somebody, when they die, has turned into a ghost. Those are completely unrelated. Newton was not talking about that at all. And how you got to that conclusion, what the first person that put that thing together, when I don't know if somebody hit them over the head with the with the science book that, or maybe they took a thermodynamics book and hit somebody over the head, and maybe that's how that conclusion came together. But those two statements should never be in the same sentence. Completely unrelated. And that's what you have to look at when you look at reliability. And we see this so much in the paranormal, is when it's padded with large vocabulary, but really has no substance. So they use all these big words, they have all these scientific terms, They're drawing in string theory. They're pulling in quantum mechanics, and the people that read it usually don't have much of a background in these disciplines.
Absolutely.
And the people writing it don't usually have much of a background in these disciplines. But, it's throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks and throwing some big words in to see what kind of jargon kind of fills in the gaps.
Well,
because
the jargon makes people think that you are more educated and smarter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Particularly if you actually use the jargon and terminology pseudo-correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're selling your goods and people buy it.
Well, the funny thing is how many times you talk to a professor of quantum mechanics or a professor of quantum physics, and the professor will tell you, I don't understand this. But somebody who watched a few YouTube videos can understand it. So, this just doesn't seem right. That's, you have to consider that.
Yes. Because, I'm sorry, I go and, because I research guests, and I've looked to see who I want to talk to and who has fresh ideas or who seems to be coming up with work that is setting a field, no matter which anomalous field, back on their heels. I like that. I like people that think outside the box, because I don't usually even acknowledge boxes, as you probably well know. But it's just so much better to be able to understand what somebody is actually saying without falling down the rabbit hole of, trying to find their bandwagon to hop on.
Absolutely. You can theorize without creating a grand scientific conspiracy theory. And, you have to also consider it. Is the content of the source based primarily in opinion? And sometimes that happens. When, in my opinion, string theory says this one specific sentence, and I can tie it over to Newton's third law, and maybe that explains ghosts. It just doesn't work that way. You can't pull it out of context. You can't cherry pick.
I'm going to step in here, because the one thing that I loved, son of a gun, that I loved most about when I was trying to grasp different levels of physics, when I was looking at quantum mechanics, and I was just like, oh, good grief, they're making this up. So it was like, it's difficult if you don't have the background, right? So I went to watch, what was that movie? Michael McConaughey disappeared, was in his daughter's room in another dimension knocking books off a shelf, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching it and I'm like, oh my God, that's string theory. That makes sense in my head. That was my connector. And it wasn't necessarily a ghost. It was someone in another dimension doing things that we attribute to ghosts. So trying to get his child's attention, I guess, to let, whatever. But it was when my switch flipped. And the quantum thing also had that same kind of moment. And it is just amazing to me what different levels of science can bring you relative to being comfortable with understanding and There's only one physicist that I have reached out to who did not respond to me when I was trying to comprehend something. And he's supposed to be the best and the brightest, but he doesn't communicate very well. So I thought, well, that'll be all right. I know a lot of others now. Right.
Right.
And so it's really nice because I actually had a friend who said, do you understand what quantum actually is? And I was like, well, yes. I said, it's little teeny tiny things. Which it is. But I spent most of my life thinking that theoretical physics was just people having a good time pulling your leg. Because there's not really a basis. And actually, I had this conversation with another friend this week. I had forgotten about that. Theoretical physicists come up with ideas, and they let others prove them. They're like, here you go, find out how this works. And it happens. They come up with a concept, people, bash their brains trying to get it figured out. And they do. Oh, wow. So I think theoretical physicists are just, a hoot and a half. They just come up with stuff that they think should work.
Oh, yeah. And, and something else to consider, too, under the reliability and relevance heading there is the author's argument balanced, and does it show both sides of an issue? Does the author address other ideas that oppose what they're writing? Do they say, here's my theory, some people think that it works this way, but this is why I suggest this. And, how are they supporting their information?
Well, I started looking at that too because of my feeling about that. And they do have the background to support their notions. I mean, they're not just random off-the-wall things, but they grasp that there's a background that should be able to be proven to support this. And that's where others take off with their research, if I'm not mistaken. And then we have, the accelerator that's trying to make black matter. So, woo.
And and another big one that falls under the reliability and relevance subheading there, and this is a big one for me. Matter of fact, in my presentations, you've seen me do this on every single slide in my presentation. Does the author provide references or research sources for the data or quotations that they use?
Exactly.
Do they tell you, this is where I found this, or do they, are they just making it up? Where did they read this? Where did they look this up? Where's the study that led them to this? Or is this something they thought of after somebody hit them over the head with the Newtonian physics book? When
they went back up.
Right, when they regained consciousness and the swelling went down. But, and did the author evaluate those sources, or did they just use them at will without questioning the validity of them, or, maybe evaluating those sources themselves? You have to consider that.
We see that so much in sites, or the lack of. CITES, not us. But, if they're not citing the work, then that's taboo anyway. But do they really understand what they're trying to do if they're not giving credit and giving the other researchers who are going to be reading their work a chance to go back and evaluate for themselves?
Oh, especially on the paranormal websites, you can go on some of them, and what I really enjoy is looking through some of those, because you can see word for word the same information that has literally been copied and pasted from one website to another to another to another over and over again. That has been that was posted on one website in 1996 or 94. It has been circulating ever since. But the next thing to move on to is we got the C covered, we got the R covered. So the A is going to be authority, and this is something to really consider. Who is the author or the creator? What are their credentials? And what gives them the authority to speak or write about the topic? If someone is a medical doctor, then I'm going to listen to them if they're talking about something medical. But if they're talking about education, maybe not so much. If they're talking about politics, I'm probably not going to say it. The same as I'm probably, if I'm having electrical problems, I'm probably not going to call a plumber, or I probably don't want to call an electrician to fix my plumbing. You probably want somebody who specializes you probably want to take somebody's word who is speaking in a field that they kind of specialize in. And even to that, it just means that even just because someone has a PhD or some type of distinguished title, you can't assume that makes them a reliable resource for the research that you're doing or for what they're writing about, because people with PhDs get things wrong too.
Well, they do.
And you got to also consider who's publishing it and why. Who's sponsoring it.
That's a valid point. That is actually a huge point, because in every environment, follow the money is a good piece of advice.
Well, and yeah, and I mean, is the author or the publisher, is it somebody that's reputable? Is it one of those? Is it a company that is someone that tends to stick with reputable authors, or is it one of those publishing company that will publish anybody that pays the publishing fee? I mean, that's something big to keep in mind. I mean, then there are some companies that will publish any book, edited, unedited, or whatever. They'll publish any file that you send to them and let people sell it. So, that has to really stand out. And what is the publisher's interest in it? Does it make sense that the publisher would endorse it?
That's a good point.
So
people don't think of very often.
Yeah, I mean, that's something to consider, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit more in just a minute. But you also have to consider the accuracy of the information.
I have to stop you. We have a quick break, and then I'm going to, when we come back, you will have the floor totally.
Oh, so, okay.
We will be right back. Y'all come back too. And Frank Lee is teaching. It's what he does best. Y'all come on back.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but
Nope.
That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. I'm Kat Hobson, your host, and my guest, Frank Lee, is in the midst of explaining the crap test, and it's excellent. And I have interrupted him and done it some more. I'm going to give him the floor. I don't do this for just anybody, but I know this guy. So, and this is valid information if you're interested in paranormal investigation or really any kind of investigation. All of this is accurate for you. So, Frank, as I said, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Kat. And yeah, the crap test, you can apply it to any type of research that you're doing, whether it's for, evaluating news sources or articles or, something paranormal, or if you're writing a book report,
or a book.
Any information that you come across, yes, this will. You can teach this to your middle schooler to help them with their homework. It will work. So we went through the CR, the C for currency, the R for reliability and relevance. And the first A was for authority. Well, then we got the second A, and crap is going to be for accuracy. And you have to evaluate. How truthful is this? So to figure that out, we have to look at. First off, the URL, if you're looking at something online, may tell you something. Is it a .com website, or is it .edu? Is it .gov, .org, .net? That may be something to consider. Where does the information come from? Is the information supported by evidence? That goes back to when we're talking about authority and reliability. Have they cited sources? Do those sources back up the claims made with evidence? Can they say, where did I get this? Has the information been reviewed or refereed? Has it been peer reviewed? Have they cited something that has a legitimate study behind it, a legitimate article, or have they just made it up? Are they citing a website that's had the same information copied and pasted that was incorrect in 1996 when it was first published? Did it come from a blog that somebody said, this is what I think? Or is it from, a reliable source? So you have to consider that. Can you verify, and this one's very important, can you verify any of this information in another source or from personal knowledge? You know, a lot of times you'll find that, you know, something that when, even when it's something new, multiple sites will publish that finding. They'll publish, even if it's a, you know, a discovery from a lab. And, you know, maybe the only publishing of it has been the actual 300 and some odd page dissertation. They're going to be, the abstract will be published with, you know, and there will be several articles that break it down across different sites. So even in that situation, you're going to find that information across several different places.
Yes.
If you can only find it in one place, then chances are it's not reliable. Something else is, does the language or tone that the author uses, does it seem unbiased and free of emotion? Does it seem like they're trying to convince you, or are they trying to inform you? Are they, you know, are they talking to you like somebody who's trying to inform you, or are they trying to get you to buy a used car in their paper there that you're reading, or are they trying to pull up that emotional appeal, or you know, what's going on there? And something big is, are there spelling, grammar, or typographical errors? That is always a big thing to look for. You know, something else is, if you're looking at a website, are there advertisements on the website? And if, you know, what kind of ads are on there? Is it something that has a paragraph and wants you to click to the next page to read the next paragraph? Or is the website selling a product? Or is it one of those where, you know, it's a 2-paragraph summary, and then there are links to about 14 different sensational type of articles at the bottom, and they're also telling you that singles in your area want to meet you at the bottom of the page. And also they can save you hundreds of dollars on your car insurance in your zip code. You know, chances are it's probably crap if you run into that on the page.
Or a new warranty.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so consider that. And finally, there's we're going to get to the P in crap, and that's their purpose. And what's the purpose of this information? Is it to inform you? Is it to teach you? Is it to sell you something, entertain you, or to persuade you?
Well, you know, that they can hide as each other too.
Mm-hmm.
They can be.
And so, go ahead. I think you're going the same place I was about to.
Well, I was just going to say that a lot of places will, you know, act like they seek to inform you, but what they really want is your credit card number, so that they can send you this book that's not even on any publisher's list at this point yet. There's a lot of that goes on out there with pseudoscience, and it just, I guess they think that people in the paranormal field specifically, but it does for health, medicines, whatever. You know, they just try to camouflage.
Oh yeah, yeah. There is a lot of it there, and I've even seen it and people trying to sell online certifications. Well, here's,
yes,
if you pay $300, we'll certify you at, you can take this 10-hour online course and we'll certify you with this. We'll give you this certification as a registered paranormal investigator that has absolutely no accreditation and isn't worth the paper it's printed on, but it's going to look great on your wall. And we could really use your money.
No doubt.
You
see that a lot with exorcists. People that say they're exorcists. Yeah. And those people, not being difficult, but that seems to be a field that people just want to be known for. And, quite honestly, you and I have had this discussion before that there is a need for people in that field, but they need to be people need to be very particular about who they reach out to. Not just anyone is an exorcist, even if they have a certificate.
Well, and a lot of that comes from a lack of accurate information, because pop culture is anything but accurate information. Mm-hmm. And people a lot of times aren't able to distinguish what is pop culture, what is Hollywood versus what is reality. And even reality TV is not reality. But and people have to consider that things like that on those sites, and even in books and things, you'll see them try to make references to programs like that, and that kind of leads to the next point that I have here is, do the authors make their intentions or their purpose clear, and you also have to consider, is the information fact, opinion, or is it even propaganda?
Well, we certainly see enough of that.
Mm-hmm. And does their point of view, does it appear objective and impartial, or are they trying to persuade you or convince you? Are there political, ideological, cultural, religious, institutional, or personal biases? If they have a bias written in something that's supposed to be informative or something like that, then that it's going to be tainted. It's going to be skewed or from a certain perspective. I can't write something that is factually neutral if I can't research something like that either if I've already made up my mind what my conclusion is going to be. Exactly. The same as I can't investigate a place properly if I've already made up my mind that, hey, that place is haunted, I should go investigate it. What's the point in investigating it if I've already convinced myself it's haunted?
Well, and as you go to review your evidence, everything is going to be relevant to what you have already put in your mind to expect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's one more point that I want to make under the purpose for the crap method, and just consider how does I want to reinforce, are they trying to, is the creator or the author trying to sell you something? I've just I've intentionally put that on there twice.
Well,
because
as you should.
That is what it comes down to. Many times you got to keep asking yourself, what is in it for them? What do they get out? Are they trying to get me to buy a book? Are they trying to get me to buy some kind of product that they sell, or what is their service that they're doing? But that is the crap method, and just putting that simple test to, if you apply it to information, it really will rule out a lot of bad sources of information.
Well, it will also save you time, money, and headaches. Mm-hmm. Because you won't have to go and unlearn something that you just knew was absolute fact because so-and-so and so-and-so who's been an investigator for 30-something years told you that.
Absolutely.
In a subscription website or in something you had to buy. That there's nothing wrong with that. I subscribe to all kinds of websites from people that I know personally who have been doing the work because I like bouncing ideas off people that have been where I'm trying to go. And I've also unsubscribed from a lot of those same. So, there you go.
Mm-hmm. So that, so that's just what I encourage everybody to do. When you're doing your research, when you're watching these videos or you're looking through these books or websites or whatever, if you see something, put it to the test.
Absolutely. And I have, you have got to come for 2 hours soon. I will. Definitely.
Well, I'm always glad to, so.
Well, I just can't get your schedule to break. So
I know it has been crazy, but I'm hanging in there and trying to.
You're doing great.
Keep my sanity.
Well, keep sanity. Are you trying to tell us that you started with sanity?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of threads, but the medication helps.
Well, I thank you. Yeah, we are so out of time, but I'm so glad you were here because
I appreciate you having me. It's always a pleasure.
Well, you're brilliant. You're a great researcher. You don't form opinions without having something to back them up, and that's important. Also important is I need people to know that these are trying times. Now we've got government people going door to door. They've already started inoculations door to door today. So that's a little scary for people. It's something definitely that gives you pause. That's okay. But you just need to remember that if you don't like what you're seeing around you, you can fix it. You can manifest things that make you happy. You can smile at somebody. You may change their whole world if you do that. Definitely you'll change yours. You can be the change that you want to see in this world. And, people thought I was kidding when I said that the 2 gentlemen that I had on Wednesday actually are people who are changing things. They go out, and they change other people's worlds daily. And that's important. You can do it for them, you can do it for you, just do it. And thank you for listening. Fate Magazine will be back on next Sunday, and I am going to have Dave and Carla back on because they have a new book out and they're going to be sharing with us about that. So take care, be blessed, be a blessing, and we will see you next time. Thank you. Good night.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.